Psycho Mantis can read people's minds. You can't resist.
Psycho Mantis?
You talk too much.
You haven't even taken the safety off, rookie.
I gave her the key. They threw her in prison because she refused to take part in the rebellion.
A new recruit? Could that be the Colonel's niece?
The legendary Solid Snake? You?
The reality is no match for the legend, I'm afraid.
Foxhound and the Next Generation Special Forces were called here for the test launching of a dummy nuclear warhead. This was to be a final test before the formal adoption of the Metal Gear program.
Where are the others? There should be 3 keys.
This is all I've got.
Where could the other 2 be?
Take me too. I know this place better than you do. I won't slow you down, I promise.
And what if you do?
Then you can shoot me. Okay, let's go. I know this place better than you. I'll be point man. Follow me. That's strange. There's no guard.
What happened to the music?
I'll keep a lookout. Make sure you're ready, okay? My head! Oh, it hurts!
What's wrong?
Don't come here, Snake!
Are you okay? What happened?
I'm fine.
Okay. Let's go.
Come on, Mr. Foxhound. The commander is waiting.
The Psycho Mantis boss battle is arguably the single most important sequence in video games from the 20th century.
Can you feel my power now?
Using both digital fusion and multiple realizability, the Mantis battle demonstrates the full potential of interactive narrative experiences to do what other media just can't.
You doubt my power? Now, I will show you why I am the most powerful practitioner of psychokinesis and telepathy in the world.
First, Mantis demonstrates his abilities as a psychic by using your save data to glean insights.
You're a careless man, aren't you? And you're a poor warrior as well. However, you are skillful at eluding traps.
This is the perfect example of multiple realizability, and just one of the several ways the Mantis sequence redefined the very concept of video games in 1998.
I can read you like an open book.
Next, you have to solve the mystery of Mantis's mind control.
The demonstration is over.
According to Kojima himself, the original idea for this iconic fight came from, quote, old Japanese animations when advisors or masters tell their students to clear their minds if they don't want their enemies to read their thoughts. To convey the sense of forcefully clearing one's mind with a fresh reset, Kojima came up with the idea of having the player disconnect your controller and switch it from port 1 to port 2. You can also just shoot at these bizarre masks in the corners here.
Do you see something that looks like a statue on both sides of the room?
Yeah. You mean those things with their faces all wrapped up in leather bands?
Yes. Attack those statues to uncover their faces.
Why?
Those statues were modeled after Mantis's real face. Mantis despises the sight of his own face. If he suddenly sees his own disfigured face staring at him, it might break his concentration.
Snake, if you destroy the faces of those statues, you should be able to disturb Mantis's psychic powers.
But at the end of the day, the experience of trying to figure this stuff out, with all the fourth wall breaks and flying furniture going on all at the same time, is what makes this encounter so memorable.
No, there's no need for words, Snake. I'm psychokinesis. That's right. This is no trick. It's true power. It's useless, I told you. I can read your every thought.
No single image symbolizes video games more than the controller. The controller port is where program meets play and player meets designer. It's a symbol for the symbiotic collaboration necessary for the medium's existence, as well as its inherent fusion between interactivity and narrativity. But none of that is the case here. Instead, that symbiotic relationship has turned parasitic. You're not only in a fight using the game's controls, it's also a fight against them. The larger and all too often overlooked aspect to Mantis's battle is that it seems to pose the player with the question. To what extent, it seems to ask, are video games covert psychology experiments?
Snake, Meryl's not herself. Don't use your weapon.
It's Psycho Mantis. He's controlling Meryl. That tune is his mind control music.
I will show you my psychokinetic power. Put your controller on the floor.
Most video games are designed to make you want to play them. Not until MGS1 was this inherent deceptiveness and manipulation an explicit part of a game's narrative and mechanics. But the series has always defined itself through mind games and double crosses. The first Metal Gear on MSX has you play through the entire game following Big Boss's orders before you discover the truth, that you were set up to fail all along. Despite the machinations of your traitorous commander, you manage in the end to survive and even defeat his plans, all thanks to the one weapon that he didn't realize you had, your own willpower and determination to see it through. MGS1, on the other hand, completely subverts all that. On the MSX, your will, your consciousness, made for a powerful weapon. Can that powerful weapon, MGS1 asks, that will, get hijacked?
I have no idea. Don't lie to me.
Can your free will be manipulated underneath your conscious awareness? What if, instead of your willpower being used to thwart the schemes of the corrupt bastards in charge, it gets exploited by them?
Nobody told you anything, did they?
Can you be made to both follow a script and act out of free choice? These are the questions in which MGS1 is an experiment. Instead of your urge to live at any cost impeding your adversary's plans, in MGS1, that willpower forms the basis for them. But this question of scripted freedom, isn't it also the perennial question of all kinds of game design? Many developers achieve this goal of getting us to want what they want us to. How? Well, exactly the same way as Snake's manipulators in MGS1. Players become pawns by the exploitation of aspects of human psychology.
What happened?
I'm fine.
In many respects, video games are virtual versions of psychologist B.F. Skinner's operant conditioning chamber, the so-called Skinner box. Using the logic of behaviorism, players are conditioned not only to play out their given role, but to enjoy it, to perceive it not as pre-programmed, but as free play, free action, even free will. The whole point of game design is to conceal the role played by mechanics and systems underneath the gameplay, to make our experiences feel genuine and intuitive rather than like actions that those mechanics and systems geared our minds towards making. We can see a dark side to the Skinner box model today with the trend of loot boxes and microtransactions. Developers fill their games with subtle Skinner box style conditioning today not only to get players invested, but to get them to literally invest, to pony up potentially endless streams of cash in what is essentially glorified gambling. I bring up microtransactions because they get at the central question of this medium's morality. This is clearly powerful technology, that's been designed to trick us. Being tricked isn't bad in of itself. After all, by definition, all fiction is in some sense a lie. There's the question of motive. Motive is what really matters, morally speaking, in this case. Should we build games to hyper-manipulate players and rob them of money just because we can? Do we pretend that by conditioning players into seeing their actions as free choices, when they engage in microtransactions, for example, that they've been given what they really want? There are certainly many in the industry today who would answer with a resounding yes. But that's not MGS1's answer. Loot boxes may not have existed in 1998, but if anything, the greed and duplicitousness of game companies today is something that MGS1 actually anticipated. MGS1's approach is to use this inherently deceptive technology in cyberpunk fashion against itself. KCE Japan used the format to make as manipulative a work as possible, but only for the sake of revealing that betrayal to the player directly. This is a fourth wall breaking game for a reason beyond simply that of using the technology in a way that it never had been before. That bigger reason is self-awareness. MGS1 is arguably one of the first attempts at a self-aware ludonarrative experience. A self-critical one even. In short, MGS1 is a game about video games. Instead of simply going along with industry trends, instead of just creating yet another Skinner box, MGS1 sets out to contemplate and even criticize the legacy, as well as the potential future of this medium, poised as it is on the precipice of the 3D age. Underneath the comic book characters and action movie spy story, MGS1 has surprising depth. And it has depth because it has self-awareness. Self-awareness is expressed not only in its themes, but in the way that MGS1 breaks the fourth wall.
If you ask me, these so-called next-generation special forces should be called simulated soldiers. They have no real battle experience.
Video game players, huh?
Don't forget they've all been strengthened with gene therapy. They carry genes which make them excellent soldiers. Don't get careless just because they don't have much experience.
Metal Gear Solid seems a little scared of its own implications as the future for the medium. In a masterstroke of irony, it is with its own graphics and programming that MGS1 comments on and critiques the capacity of games to serve as instruments of mind control and experimentation. In the beginning, MGS1 sold itself quite convincingly as a modern high-tech action spy thriller in the mold of, say, The Rock or The Hunt for Red October. Each of your support staff, with the exception of Master Miller, help reinforce this idea through dialogue that Snake is a brave and noble hero.
Excellent, Snake. Age hasn't slowed you down one bit.
It's an honor to speak to a living legend like yourself.
Well, if you make it back in one piece, maybe I'll let you do a strip search on me.
You're our only hope. The world is counting on you.
The mission objectives themselves make Snake seem virtuous, by virtue of the loaded propagandized language that they employ.
Foxhound hijacking a nuclear weapon?
Now you understand how serious the situation is.
Words like hostage and terrorist, for example, are hardly neutral and hardly descriptive.
Any questions, Snake?
Questions? I haven't even said whether I'd accept this mission.
Well, you can make up your mind after you hear more about the situation.
Of course, the minute we arrive on Shadow Moses Island, MGS1 is already working on betraying us.
Anyway, hurry up and get to the second-floor basement. You've got to save the Arms Tech president before the terrorists find out his code.
Betraying its own premise as well as its own players, who obviously are the only ones that any of this ruse is meant to dupe. Right away, MGS1 was telling us to trust our eyes much more than our ears. The rats that almost seem to follow your infiltration route imply a connection to it and to you. What hides and sneaks and crawls in the filth in the silent dark but vermin?
What about the vent shaft cleaning?
They just opened the vent covers. They're about to start spraying for rats.
And as you near Anderson's cell in the first level basement of the tank hangar, the air ducts are gradually but strongly associated visually with the intestines, digestion, and finally excrement.
Ugh, kinda damn cold. I hate Alaska.
A nuclear weapon, heads. They shouldn't have access.
You can stop the launch. Take this. It's my ID card. It'll open any level 1 security door. It's called a PAN card.
But the game's dirt and grime hardly goes away. From the visibly dirty armory to the piss-stained bathroom tiles here, From the frozen boxes to these frozen-looking doors, MGS1 says with its visuals as much as with its story, characters, and dialogue how ugly, weathered, and unglamorous its own world can be.
Those mice are Alaskan field mice. Don't worry, they can't hurt you. But there's a dark side too. Sometimes the males will kill and eat offspring that's not their own.
To ensure the survival of their own genes, right?
Yeah, pretty brilliant program, huh?
By the period in between Ninja to Mantis, we are starting to discover the actual tone and premise of MGS1 isn't going to come directly from 90s Hollywood action or from 90s Japanimation. Rather, in the words of Kojima, MGS1 was envisioned by its creator as something akin to a Sam Peckinpah picture. In other words, a movie from the gritty, disillusioned 1970s. The first clue that all will not be as advertised in terms of the story came during the scene in the cell with Anderson. Not only is the camera during their exchange strongly emphasizing either the toilet or the toilet paper all but constantly, also the revelation that Anderson only got taken hostage here because he was working on Rex, the very weapon now being aimed at the world's head by Foxhound, obliterates the initial premise of Snake's heroism and that of his taskmasters. If Anderson and Baker had been saved like according to plan, in all likelihood they'd have gone right back to work on Rex for mass production. This is made even more explicit once Baker hands off the test data. Snake is then implicated fully in what MGS1, in no uncertain terms, is characterizing as a crime. If Rex's test data and specifications make it back to Secretary of State Jim Hausman, a man on a first-name basis with Baker, the possible implications are as numerous as they are terrifying. This entire Shadow Moses incident is attributable to just one Rex and a handful of genetically amplified super soldiers. What could be done with an entire army of mass-produced Rexes? It's almost unthinkable. But during the scene with Baker, MGS1 again lures us, somehow, into seeing Snake as heroic. Next to Baker, anyone would look angelic, and the game effectively plays off their dynamic to imply, while stopping short of ever actually saying, that we can still believe its initial premise that Snake is the archetypal hero and good soldier.
What did you think of him?
He is just as you said. In battle, he is as if possessed by a demon. Much like you, I would expect no less.
See? I told you so.
But the scene following the tank battle casts some doubt on Snake's heroism, in comparing him so strongly to Liquid. It also diminishes our sense of Snake's capabilities, since so far he's yet to actually do anything that he wasn't meant to do.
Why don't you look for the areas where the walls are a different color?
Touch that wire, and the C4 will blow up along with the old man.
Not yet. Don't kill him yet.
He and I will meet again in battle.
I've removed all obstacles. Now you and I will battle to the death.
In other words, we've yet to see any real heroism, any genuine action outside of tests, ruses, and simulations. To the contrary, literally everyone except for Meryl and Otacon seems to have outsmarted Snake. And as I said in an earlier episode, Snake's comments throughout the mission hardly seem particularly heroic. They sound more apathetic, if not jaded.
There are no heroes in war. All the heroes I know are either dead or in prison, one or the other.
But Snake, you're a hero, aren't you?
I'm just a man who's good at what he does, killing.
Finally, there is the meetup with Meryl and the confrontation with Mantis. These back-to-back story beats are arranged together for a reason. The section of MGS1 from Fox to Mantis may as well be called its mirror stage. Both visually and thematically, reflections and self-image, or ego-related thoughts, revelations, and emotions are prevalent throughout every scene here, from Fox to Mantis.
I'm losing myself.
I'm such a fool. It's all my fault.
The truth is, I was just afraid of looking at myself, afraid of having to make my own decisions in life. But I'm not gonna lie to myself anymore. It's time I took a long, hard look at myself.
But why did you go so far out of your way to save her? For Campbell's sake, or maybe it's because you like her?
I don't want to see any woman die right in front of me.
However, Mantis' defeat ushers in the climax of the game's mirror stage, while marking a decisive and definitive shift in its tone, subject matter, and themes.
So, you used the other...
A strong man doesn't need to read the future. He makes his own.
Perhaps so, but I'll read your future. To get to Metal Gear's underground maintenance base, you have to go through that hidden door. There's a hidden door behind the bookcase. The overland route. It's blocked by frozen glaciers. Go past the communication towers. And use the tower's walkway.
Why are you telling me this?
I can read people's minds. In my lifetime, I have read the pasts, presents, and futures of thousands upon thousands of men and women. And each mind that I peered into was stuffed with the same single object of obsession. That selfish and atavistic desire to pass on one's seed. It was enough to make me sick. Every living thing on this planet exists to mindlessly pass on their DNA. We're designed that way. And that's why there is war. But you are different. You're the same as us. We have no past, no future. We live in the moment. That's our only purpose. Humans weren't designed to bring each other happiness. From the moment we're thrown into this world, we're fated to bring each other nothing but pain and misery. The first person whose mind I dove into was my father's. I saw nothing but disgust and hatred for me in his heart. My mother died in childbirth, and he despised me for it. I thought my father was going to kill me. That's when my future disappeared. I lost my past as well. When I came to, the village was engulfed in flames.
Are you saying that you burned your village down to bury your past?
I see that you have suffered the same trauma. We are truly the same, you and I. The world is a more interesting place with people like you in it. I never agreed with the boss's revolution. His dreams of world conquest do not interest me. I just wanted an excuse to kill as many people as I could.
You monster.
Let him talk. He doesn't have much time left.
I've seen through evil. You, Snake, you're just like the boss. No, you're worse. Compared to you, I'm not so bad.
It's here, as Mantis removes his mask, that the game itself follows suit, unmasking itself to reassert explicitly what until now lingered mostly in its periphery.
You have a large place in your heart.
A large place?
Yes, a large place. But I do not know if your futures lie together. I have a last request.
What is it?
My mask. Put it back on.
Okay.
Like this, other people's thoughts force their way into my mind. Before I die, I want to be by myself. I want to be left alone in my own world. I'll open the door for you. If you want to find your future, go through that door. This is the first time I've ever used my power to help someone. It's strange. It feels kind of nice.
Let's go, Meryl.
I'm sorry.
Meryl?
How could I let Mantis control my mind like that?
If you're gonna doubt yourself, I'll leave you here.
You're right.
Never doubt yourself. Just let it make you stronger. Learn something from it.
You're right. I'm sorry. I won't do it again. Snake, can I ask you something?
What?
About what Mantis said. I was just wondering.
What? What's the problem now?
Oh, no, nothing. So, tell me, Snake. What's your name? Your real name?
A name means nothing on the battlefield.
How old are you?
Old enough to know what death looks like.
Any family?
No, but I was raised by many people.
Is there anyone you like?
I've never been interested in anyone else's life.
So you are all alone. Just like Mantis said.
Other people just complicate my life. I don't like to get involved.
You're a sad, lonely man.
Come on, let's go.
The Peckinpah-esque world weariness and harshness finally comes through to replace all trace of Tom Clancy or Arnold Schwarzenegger. And in this pull of the rug beneath us, MGS1 is doing more than subverting its own storytelling or asserting an attitude towards itself. It's also commenting on the history and culture of games themselves, as well as forwarding a controversial point of view that's all too often ignored or completely missed by even its own biggest fans. The media we consume has a huge yet invisible influence on our minds, on how we interpret reality. And no medium is more powerfully influential, more psychological, more built around conditioning and repetition and unconscious priming than video games. Throughout the mission, Snake's mindset has been unwaveringly focused. In this essential aspect, Snake is also sort of like the mindset of many gamers during the 90s and early 2000s. If Snake played games, in other words, MGS1 would probably not be one he particularly liked. Because Snake's not interested in people, or feelings, or politics. He's not interested in deep or meaningful connections, or in finding himself, or even in finding love or happiness. In short, Snake's only ever alive on the killing field. His life begins and ends with the mission. He has no time for childish excuses about Japanimation, and he doesn't give a crap about you or your company. He's like a demon in battle, but in life he's just a sad man, as Meryl tells him. So we've established that games have a lot of power as tools of manipulation. But what purpose has this manipulation been directed towards? Through conditioning and psychological priming, video games have served an important role over time in ridding America of its so-called Vietnam syndrome. Coined by Henry Kissinger and popularized by Ronald Reagan, the Vietnam syndrome is a term that refers to the major socio-political shift in American sentiment that followed Watergate and the failed wars in Indochina. Guilt by association had tainted the patriotism and conformity that had so defined American society in the 1950s and throughout World War II. Trust and approval in the government had hit historic lows. For the first time since coming into existence, the military-industrial complex in the 1970s was criticized and questioned. War lost its sense of adventure and inherent heroism.
I'll be so glad to go home. I don't know. It's the worst area we've been in since I've been in Vietnam.
You think it's worth it?
Yeah, I don't know. They say we're fighting for something. I don't know.
And this shift was reflected in the tone and subject matter of the period's cinema. Movies like All the President's Men and The Deer Hunter couldn't have been more different than the 1940s wartime propaganda of, say, Frank Capra and Walt Disney. The grim reality, in other words, of war was finally exposed. It was nice while this lasted, but it all changed in the era of Ingsoc, the Information Society. The objective accountability of an independent press was all but drowned out in the coming tide of information. The result was a world purged of all visible unseemliness. Existence itself, more and more, became something utterly mediated by digital technology, something hyper-real. And video games played a central role in all of this. An entire generation was raised in relative peace and security to think of war not in terms of their father's generation, back into some bizarre return to the days of World War II, with games replacing the propagandistic role formerly played by films and posters. Yet there's a key distinction between World War II and the era of Desert Storm. Unlike the rhetoric of World War II, which emphasized coming together as a community to defend the homeland, in the high-tech environment of the 1990s, the emphasis shifted towards the individual. The military, in other words, co-opted the logic and rhetoric of the drug counterculture movement that had emerged in the 1960s. Escapist egotism became the focus, an army of one. And that's where video games came in. With the conditioning of games, war became like a drug. Blow shit up with the highest tech weapons in the world and get home before dinner. And not only would you save the world, you'd have fun doing it. This is the major shift in public consciousness that video games played a pivotal role in bringing about. They became the primary tool for conditioning young people in the 1990s out of the Vietnam syndrome, for reinforcing associations between violence and entertainment, between war and peace. Flash forward to today, 2019. America is at war in at least 7 countries around the world, and most of its citizens neither know nor care about that. A huge part of why is probably because of how our military uses technology. The majority of conflicts today are waged with small numbers of highly trained special forces units in tandem with unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. We kill people from the safety of hundreds of miles of distance away, and we often use video game-like controllers and arcade cabinet-like hardware to do so. Games and digital technology have clearly done their job. War has lost most, if not all, of its meaning in the 21st century, and digital technology has become inextricably wrapped up in the military-industrial complex. It's hard to emphasize enough how huge of a step forward and how iconoclastic for games this reveal of Snake's inner emptiness truly is. MGS1 has already challenged the norms of the industry thus far in countless ways, chief among them its lack of pre-rendered CGI, abundance of voice acting, de-emphasis on killing, and major emphasis on things like environmental storytelling, gestures, and dynamic real-time camera angles. But with this moment, MGS1 takes aim at some of the most sacred cows and oldest establishments in video games. Coming on the heels of the boss fight with Mantis, here MGS1 seems to ask, is this the kind of person we've all been emulating? Yet here's the upside to all this. The same technology that created this apathy and conformity, this shift in the public mind, well, it could also be used to spark awareness and start conversations. That's what MGS1 sets out to do. Not only to hold this medium accountable, but just as intently to forge an alternate path forward. By being a game about games, MGS1 sets out to prove that this medium can be used for self-awareness and for self-discovery just as much as for manipulation and mind control. You can stop being part of a mistake today, but not before realizing that it's a mistake to begin with. And that's what MGS1 is, an attempt at exposing or confronting the demons of this medium face to face. By the end, this sequence follows through with not only questions, but a few answers and insights as well. Mantis explains clearly and simply what has driven everything from the exploitation and co-opting of gaming by the military to the continued interminable existence of nuclear weapons. From the dropping of atomic bombs in 1945 to the ethnic cleansing campaigns and civil wars that came in the wake of the Cold War in the 1990s. Mantis explains all of this, all of human nature, with subjective interpretation intermingled with the characters' lived first-hand experiences directly inside other people's heads. For him, what drives everything humans do, from good thoughts and deeds to so-called evil ones, is the same drive. The drive for not only survival today and tomorrow, but for longevity, for a legacy. The drive for existence. This drive has left gaps in our reasoning, flaws in our genetic makeup. The problem of nuclear deterrence, for example, is nothing more than the problem of the prisoner's dilemma. At bottom, our follies, as much as our triumphs, are first and foremost psychological. And in psychology, only by speaking something aloud can you free yourself from its power. By confronting us with Snake's confrontation of himself, the game essentially has confronted us with the dark mirror of our own reflection. By drawing Snake's character and his humanity under scrutiny like this, the game has dismantled Snake's heroism and his legend conclusively. By daring to look behind the surface of its own characters to show the player some deeper sense of meaning or truth, MGS1 is not only building a more nuanced and immersive world, it's also calling on you, the player, to reflect on yourself as much as to question what you've been told by the society that you're living in, and specifically by video games. All of this and more hopefully helps explain why the scenes with Mantis remain to this day so vital, so important, and so alive.
So, what do you think? Pretty good, huh?
How did you know where the mines were?
It sounds weird, but when Mantis dove into my mind, I was able to see where the mines were placed. Are you impressed?
Well, a little bit.
Only a little?
Meryl!
What is it?
Meryl, get down! Meryl!
Snake, leave me and run.
Meryl!
I guess I am a rookie after all.
Don't worry, Meryl, it's me they want.
Even I know that. It's the oldest trick in the book. The sniper's using me for bait to lure you out.
Damn.
Shoot me, Snake.
No!
My gun. I can't reach it by myself.
Don't move.
I promised I wouldn't slow you down. I can still help. I want to help you.
Quiet down. Save your strength.
I was a fool. I wanted to be a soldier. But war is ugly. There's nothing glamorous about it. Snake, please save yourself. Go on living and don't give up on people. Don't forget me. Now get out of here.
It's hard to miss when you're this close. Toss your weapon over here. Slowly. You are a fool to come back here. Stupid man.
A lady sniper, huh?
Didn't you know that 2/3 of the world's greatest assassins are women? Do you want to die now? Or after your female friend? Which will it be?
I'll die after I kill you.
Is that right? Well, at least you've got spirit. I am Sniper Wolf, and I always kill what I aim at. Oh, you're my special prey. Got it. Oh, I've left my mark on you. I won't forget it. Until I kill you. You're all I think about.
Take him away.